podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to the first Molby On The Spot of the season. Podcasting to you from my field here in a dreary rural Ireland. I'm Trev Downey, and I'm of course joined by Mr. Jan Molby to give us the benefit of his insight into what's been happening since we spoke last, which I just checked was last June, was when Molby On The Spot last had a show. I think the 3rd or 6th of June or something like that. So people are going to be jonesing for a bit of Jan. How are you doing, sir?
Excellent, Trevor. Yeah, it has indeed been a while, hasn't it? We always seem to have these big plans in the summer and we never quite get there, do we? And I think it's to do with, I know what school teachers are like once you give them a few weeks off, you know what I mean? You just can't control them.
Yeah, let's blame me on this one, eh?
Exactly.
Yeah, I love it. Listen, man, it's all changed. When we last spoke, there was an element of the sadness of the end of the Jurgen era. It was still very fresh and in everyone's memory, and loads of warmth towards the man and all the rest of it. I remember both of us saying that whilst we absolutely both felt that, there was also kind of an excitement about starting this new thing that's been dangling over our heads for well over 3/4 of a year now, it seems, since the announcement about Jurgen leaving was made. And it's just kind of great to have started. Now, I'm normally not one to engage in pre-season at all, but I found myself staying up late watching those matches just because it is something new. And I know there's only so much you can learn, but it just has this sort of aura of excitement about it. There's one thing that's, I think, pulling everyone down at the moment, but we'll get to that later. How have you felt in terms of that sort of aspect of things? You know, that the freshness of it is quite, it's dare I say it, almost a relief, Jan.
Yeah, no, I agree. We thought, and we probably even feared a little bit of the transition from Klopp to a new manager. But I actually think that Arne Klopp has played it really well. Is 100% his own man. And whereas Klopp, which I guess you do, and Klopp very much concentrated on what he was good at. So Klopp, apart from being a very good coach, was also a showman. Whereas Arne Slot is not. I think we've learned that already. There's nothing wrong with his English. He speaks good English, but he's not a showman, but he's a coach. You know, and I guess a lot of people made a lot out of that he was named head coach instead of a manager, but he is a coach. And I think he's comfortable with that. And I think he's proved that. What we're hearing from pre-season, players enjoying the coaching sessions, what we're seeing from the games, and even the first Premier League game of the weekend against Ipswich, where we needed something at half-time, and he's produced. So I think he's come in, and he's living up to the role of being a really good coach. And then I think he's just going to let everything else run its course, and it'll look after itself. I noticed that I was at Portman Road on Saturday, and at the end, we won 2-0, and he stood on the touchline for about 30 seconds, had a little look, and he just walked down the sideline into the tunnel, felt there was no need for him to get involved in anything further. I quite like that. It was the case of, I disliked what Klopp did, but Klopp was a different personality.
I think that's a really important point you've made that I don't think enough has been made of, because I think if Arne had gotten into a situation at the end of that first game where he's running down to the away fans and gesticulating wildly and you know, even just going down to acknowledge even quietly their presence or whatever, it would have that sort of what is he trying to do here in terms of, almost like a kind of a poor man's Jurgen. And I think you're so right. I think it's good to see the guy. He is a more reserved character. I would say far from shy. And I've yet to meet a Dutchman who can't speak his mind. But he does seem to have a kind of a quiet reserve about him. He seems to have a sense of humor about him as well. I mean, I would say he's blue in the face having to address the topic of Jurgen Klopp. But he almost brings it up voluntarily without any great... I suppose, jealousy or envy or feeling of pressure. He seems to be very comfortable in his own skin, I guess, is what I'm getting at. And that's a great thing. It's a hugely important thing when you're going into a dressing room full of big, big personalities, big egos, all of them staring at you, Jan, and saying, what have you got?
Which can be very difficult because, as we've often discussed, dressing rooms are basically brutal in terms of their assessment, and they don't get anyone inside. But I just think that the biggest strength he's got, Arne Slot, is that he's comfortable within having to go from Jurgen Klopp. He's comfortable with what Jurgen Klopp achieved for the 9 months, for 9 years he was there, He's comfortable with all that. Because I think deep down he thinks, I'm also going to make a good fist of this. In maybe 6 months or whatever, I'm going to make a good fist of this. People are going to see what I can do, and I'm comfortable I can do it. I just thought down Saturday at the end of the game, Trevor, I really liked that. You briefly mentioned before. It's almost as if, had he run across the pitch and desperate for the adulation of the fans, it is a little bit desperate, isn't it? He felt, no, my football will do is talking, and I'll be different to Jurgen. And I think it did. Again, I thought he was impressive at half time. I thought Ipswich's press worked well with the front four. At a half time, we changed one or two things. We played through the press. Instead of playing with longer passes, we now split passes down the side of the centre half, so in between them, and they were done. It was so one-sided in the second half, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Well, you've brought us nicely into that opening game of the season, and it's great for the show that we have one to look back on, a game of import, and very much the old St. Greavesy game of two halves, this one, as you've kind of alluded to. But I find it very interesting that your analysis of what changed in the second half from being there personally and watching it with the eyes that you've been gifted to have in your head when you're assessing football, because the majority of the analysis centred on the removal of Jarrell Quansah, who had been, according to Arne, quite... clearly, he wasn't singling him out. He didn't say his name, but he made it clear that we were losing tackles, losing challenges in important areas. And most of the analysis centred on Ibu Kanate coming in and then freeing the midfielders to sort of be able to be a little bit more creative and get on the front foot a bit more by dint of his added sort of defensive nous and presence and all the rest of it. But you're talking about a style of play there that changed slightly as well, that was clear to you. And I think that's really important. Obviously, one thing can come from the other, because if the midfielders feel more confident to play, they're maybe going to play those passes. But it is a bit more complex than just a sub, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I didn't sit at halftime and think, wow, we need to make a change here. I thought we were average in the first half, but not because of Quansah, but because we weren't at it. And I was, as I said before, I wasn't thinking we must make a substitution here. We did in the end. And what I noticed is, and you would have noticed this, Trev, is that we don't see so much flying fullbacks anymore. It's very central, isn't it? We like to play through the middle, keep loads of bodies central. We like to pass through the middle and then get it into midfield players who can slide it down the side of people. We didn't manage to do that in the first half, but I thought it worked well in the second half. We passed the ball that little bit quicker through their first press. Once we'd done that, once we'd opened up the game, we had too much pace, but we also had too many good ball players. And all of a sudden, you were looking at, I think it's fair to say, possibly 7, 8, 9 very identical situations where we split passes down the sideline between the centre halves. We created chances. And in the end, I thought it was a miracle that we only won 2-0. It could have so easily been a lot more. But I just saw subtle little changes at half-time. Get even more players central. Let's play through the middle. That's the way he wants to play, isn't it? And then, of course, on top of that, We saw them at Mo Salah isolated against Leif Davis, their left back, which was, well, I mean, it was so one-sided, it was unbelievable. So, but I thought all the things that you wanted Arne Slot to be good tactically, because that's what you were told he was. We were told it wasn't going to be a Jurgen Klopp Mark II. It was going to be something different. And at the first time of calling, with a small issue, a half-time against a team we probably would have beaten anyway. But nevertheless, he changed things. So instead of maybe winning the game 1 or even 2-0, but having struggled a bit, he took the game away from them. And as I said before, so dominant in the second half. And in the end, I couldn't believe we only scored 2.
Yeah, it's very gratifying to see the win coming on the back of obvious coaching, in-game, if you like, changes and tactical changes. It speaks very well towards what we've got there in Slot in terms of a fella who can trust his judgment and back it, and there's a lovely fluidity to the forward play, which of course has always been a hallmark under the tutelage of Klopp as well. But it is really notable that there were, as you said, it could have been 5 or 6, and it wouldn't have necessarily flattered Liverpool too much if it had been 4 or 5 at least anyway. And there's all these, what I loved seeing from the pre-season games was we're seeing a lot of cutbacks and balls slid in square, and that Jota goal, that's just a lovely goal. Every part of it, all the pass, all the passing, all the movement. It was just, it really was a kind of a beautifully fluid kind of goal from beginning to end. Everyone doing everything right. Even, the contribution of Gravenberch right at the start, of Trent. Mo's ball is absolutely pitch perfect, and the finish is perfection as well. But he seems to have unlocked, shall we say, the capacity for our good players to do their stuff. And that'll do for me. I mean, we're going to talk, because it's inevitable, we have to talk about recruitment and what we could do with and what we haven't gotten, lads going out and all the rest of it. But, if there was enough fortune that lads could stay fit, we do have a squad that's capable of at least reproducing what happened last season and likely doing a bit better.
So, I mentioned before I was at Portman Road on Saturday, and it was a tremendous occasion. I mean, the excitement in Ipswich and the people was so lovely, and I don't think I've ever had so many pictures taken with Ipswich Town fans, because they were just delighted to be back, and they go, "Oh, this is great. This is a day we never thought we were going to see again." And then you asked them, I'll be more polite than anything. He said, "Well, what's your team like?" And they went, "Oh, you'll be surprised." And I'm not convinced I was. I think they'll find it really, really difficult. But because it was a nice hot day, and I thought the only place in the shade is in the commentary position. So we went up to the commentary position really early, and the guy I was working with is doing all these pre-work. And then Liverpool are doing their warm-up, and then they do all the ball work with the ball. And I went, have a look at this. And it was exactly what you mentioned before. Cutbacks, flat crosses. Everything was along the ground, flat, in behind people. And I've never ever seen that. You see teams do this all the time. They do the 3-man set on 1 centre, 2 out wide, and they put loads of crosses and whatever. Everything we did was flat. Everything was along the ground. So it's obviously something that he wants to work on. He doesn't want high crosses for people to head them into the back of the net. He wants things slit across. It was very evident in that warm-up.
And it's... Now, let it be said, obviously, Manchester City it's kind of a trademark of theirs, right? We've watched them do that exact thing so often. And we know by dint of his own admission that Slot has been hugely influenced by both Klopp and, I think even more pointedly so, Guardiola. So it is interesting to see those types of things. And it is interesting to see slightly different patterns of play with these lads that we've gotten so used to. And we have gotten used to this squad. And it is sort of brilliant that he had the full pick to choose from. in terms of fitness as the season starts. But the big story, of course, beforehand was that Joe Gomez wasn't in the squad, which I think nominally he would certainly consider that he should have been. And then it turns out that Joe's kind of up for grabs, as it seems are most of the young lads. And there's been quite a lot of movement away from the club. An amazing amount of money gleaned for Fabio Carvalho. It looks, after Sepp Vandenberg did a bit of crying and complaining over the summer about being priced out of a move, that we're looking like we're probably going to get big money from, I think it's Brentford for Sepp Vandenberg, up to 25 million, I think, ultimately. And, you know, we've got 10 million in the door for Bobby Clark in a permanent deal.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. Ha. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
To Red Bull Salzburg. There are lots and lots of loans, and now people are saying that there could be a big money move or a sizable money move for Joe Gomez as well. And I'm seeing a lot of debate. I know you don't burden yourself with the nonsense that is social media, but there is a lot of debate going on about whether or not it's too much of our young players going. And a huge amount of them are heading out on loan. The fellas come to the fore under Jurgen last year in the cup runs and stuff like that. And people are openly questioning whether, like, it's too many lads to go out, you know. And if we just focus on the centre-half area, if Vandenberg goes, and we didn't have him last season as such, Matip is a loss. Joe Gomez will be a loss. Poor old Nat Phillips looks like he's going to be trapped at the club forever. But you can see why people are so anxious to get that centre-half that we've been linked with, that left-sided defender at least, that we've been linked with, at least to get that one done. It is causing a lot of anxiety for fans when we're the only club who has not bought a player yet. Where are you sitting with all of this? And do you think it's too early to panic with the amount of days that are left? Was it 22nd now? 8 days left. People probably have a right to panic, do they?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think people have a right to panic. Absolutely. Whether there's anything to panic over in terms of Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes coming into the club, looking at the squad and going, well, okay, there is no glaring gaps. There is no position in the team where we're absolutely desperate. Yes, we could do with another centre-half, but in the meantime, we've got plenty of numbers. Centre midfield, yes, but potentially after that, elite number 6, which, to be fair, we tried to buy in Chubby Mendy, didn't come through. So I think Edwards and Hughes are just going to go, oh, well, okay, let's get our own house in order. Let's assess what we've got. And that includes fringe players and young players, and make decisions from there. And of course, when I'm talking about assessing players, I'm also talking about the big 3 with less than 12 months on their contract. So that's also something that needs to be looked at pretty seriously. So I fully understand. But I also kind of think that Michael Edwards has probably got this under control, and he's probably building up towards what we saw in 2018, 2019, a squad filled with players at the peak in the mid-20s, having 2 years left on the contracts, having 4 years left on the contract. We need to replace that fella in that position or whatever. So he wants to get all these building blocks in place. I was a bit frustrated the other day, though, because we were talking about Michael Edwards, and I went, I think he's as good as there is in the business. And I think he knows that. He's a very, very good director of football, although that's not his title, but he's involved. And I said, but I just want him to do his job. And his job is not just to sell players, it's also to bring in some players, isn't it? Because as it happened, we might look like we're just behind Arsenal and Manchester City, but it wouldn't take a lot to make that up, would it? 2 really good players would be able to maybe make that little bit of a gap up. So that's the frustrating, isn't it? Because you're thinking, well, go on, come on, let's bring in 2. I mean, I don't know if you saw it over the weekend, Trevor, but he got so desperate that the Everton centre half, Jared Brandwaite, was back into 64 to join us. It's like, and I was like, bloody hell, is this where we've ended up? But it's obviously desperations and, looking at that sort of left side of centre half business. So what will happen, Trevor? I don't know. I mean, you mentioned the players there that we sold. Now it looks like 25 million for Sepp Vandenberg. Tyler Wharton could be going to Leipzig for 20 million. And Joe Gomez, I think the club is only fair with Joe. They've gone limited opportunities here now. If you want to go, you can go. I don't quite believe we're going to get the valuation that was involved when we were looking to get Anthony Gordon from Newcastle, and Joe was valued at 45 million. I'm not convinced we're going to get that, but we might get 30. So we've had a good summer in terms of making room, in terms of financial fair play, isn't it? But where the money should be, Trevor? The money should always be on the pitch, shouldn't it? It shouldn't be sitting in a bank account. It should be out on the pitch.
That's it. It's going to be very, very cold consolation to the likes of myself. There are some lads who seem to be more fans of accounting and ownership groups than they are of Liverpool Football Club, and they get very, very excited and delighted about clever business. But like I say, that's never really been my bag. Like I often say, doesn't keep me warm at night. Trophies do, and it's interesting that you mentioned earlier on about how Slot might fancy his chances of doing quite well at Liverpool, and I would think that he'd be right too, because I've often thought that when you consider the wonderful footballers that he has had at his disposal, it's only right that, Liverpool would have been successful under Jurgen. And that's not to take away anything from the man himself in terms of fashioning the culture at the club for that success to happen. When you think about the squad and team he took over and where we ended up when we were at the peak of his football, when we're winning Champions Leagues and league titles, and, coming within a point of the league on 2 other occasions and losing 2 other Champions League finals, that is outrageous. And if Slot could maintain even a partially similar rate, and maybe the difference would be that he might win 1 or 2 of those things. So he should be optimistic about being successful. But I think it would be really weird, Jan, if you started a new season with this new ownership group being the star as opposed to the manager having a little bit of focus on him. Because who the hell brings in a new manager and then does not supply him with a couple of new players? This is leading towards something. It's leading towards what may happen if things start to go wrong. I've heard it from 1 or 2 people already who should know better. But the concept of Slot as a kind of a quiet yes man who's just gonna he came in knowing he would, because it's such a big step up for him, and he's quite happy to just accept it. He'll have to work with whatever squad he has. I don't even want to be hearing that. I really want them to sort of bless his tenure with a couple of big signings. The number 6 we know we need, and the left-sided defender, like someone like Inacio, who we've been linked with continually. And with only 8 days left, it does feel as if it may not happen, and I don't find any consolation in having done good business at all.
No, not a dry Trevor. When people were panicking a month ago, I think we knew then why nothing had happened, because they did say when they came in, we've got to give this time. There's a European Championships of the Copa America. Players come back late. We will have a look at this again in August. You go, okay, fair enough. But August will still give you best time of 4 weeks to get something done. And all we seem to be interested in, although we did show our hand a little bit, which should be Mendy, but all we seem to be interested in is clearing out players. And my whole argument is, and I had this argument, they get up Bournemouth Road on Saturday with some of the media guys, and they're going, well, this guy's going to need a bit of time. And I went, really? I said, Liverpool are at a certain level, and they picked a manager that they feel is capable of continuing at that level. It's not as if they've gone back and gone, well, okay, we got a manager who might not be able to. They firmly believe that Arne Slot can deliver and produce at the level Jurgen Klopp did. So because of that, he doesn't need any time, but he needs help. So if you could get over, my biggest concern is the midfield, Trevor. My biggest concern last year was the midfield, and the midfield is still my biggest concern. And if you could get over the fact that he has to sort of find a solution to the missing number 6, that can't be ideal, can it? I mean, Gravenberch played okay against Ipswich, isn't it? But I'm thinking, it's pretty soon it's Manchester City, and even when you play Brighton and Mitoma, the Japanese boy, played central against Everton, and you imagine him playing in there with his trickery and his pace, and then all of a sudden you go, where is our specialised number 6? So I think it would be a big help for Arne Slot if you could get somebody so he doesn't have to. Is it McAllister and Gravenberch, or is it Endo that needs to play today, or Curtis Jones, or whatever, isn't it? That that this is the boy and he's world class. So yeah, that would be a big help.
The stories about Endo basically being up for grabs would lead you to think that he's low down in the pecking order when it comes to what Slot wants. And I liked that Endo sort of said, no, I want to hang around, I want to be part of the squad. This is my dream to come to this club, and I want to try and break into the team. And I don't see how that can be a bad thing, to have a player there who's highly motivated to get in, who has as much experience as he has. So that's one thing. But whether or not the manager fancies him is all that matters. But it's this thing of, we have spent a considerable period of the time that we left ourselves to recruit players, chasing Zubimendi, and it ended up in a little bit of a farce in the end. Not necessarily any fault of the club necessarily, depending on whether you're vehemently opinionated one way or the other. If a player says no in the end, and it's his decision because he doesn't want to be branded as this a traitor to his hometown club who wanted him to stay and he wanted to go. Look, I get that. That's more to do with human feelings and all the rest of it. But we spent all last summer chasing Caicedo, and then we were linked with at least one or two others, and that they didn't work out. And the previous summer there was chat about Tchouaméni and all the rest of it. We clearly want this footballer. It's so disingenuous for people to talk to people about how, there's just not, many footballers who are of the right caliber for this club. It's hard to get good footballers to come into this squad. I really don't buy that, Jan. I mean, there are a lot of decent central, defensively minded midfielders out there who could do a really good job for us. It just feels, when you're getting this line off, whether it's the manager having to parrot it, or you're getting it fed to you via the journos who always have the official line from the club. Liverpool are not probably unlikely to look for another number 6 after the Vandenberg after the Zubimendi deal fell through. Well, why? Now, clearly that could be bullshit too, and it could be just out there as a bit of a smokescreen. But if the window closes and that's all we've been given, I'm not okay with these people who just say, hey, just trust the squad and trust the manager, it'll all be fine. No, we clearly have an issue with this position that we wanted to address. It's been glaringly obvious and played out in public. So it seems silly not to have had a plan B that could just be executed at the drop of a hat. I'm so confused by that.
Yeah, I think most people are. I think most people find it really difficult. As I said before, I mean, there's an impression that Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes is getting their own house in order, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't go out and buy. And as you rightly said, I mean, if we're being brutally honest, with the players we missed out in that position, I mean, last year you mentioned Caicedo, was also Lavia. Now this year it should be Mendy and Tchouaméni a couple of years ago when he went to Real Madrid. So we should be able to find somebody else in that time. That's for sure. And it must be frustrating for the manager because you almost get. I don't doubt for 1 minute that Arne Slot enjoys working and improving young players. I don't doubt that 1 minute. Guy's very, very Dutch. Well, he's now at the top table, isn't he? You know, he's now having to compete with. Well, when he was at the final, he had to compete with Ajax and PSV Eindhoven. There was no expectations in Europe, although they did get to the Europa League or Conference League final or whatever it was, but there was no expectations. But at Liverpool, there's expectation that you've got to be able to compete with City and Arsenal and all the top teams in Europe. So I think he's thinking, and I think that's why, Trevor, he's making these very quick and in some people's opinion, brutal assessment of the youngsters. I briefly mentioned Tyler Morton before, who people within the club have a lot of faith in, but apparently Arne Slot doesn't. So he's making a lot of those decisions very quick because he's thinking, I've got to go up against, who's next? Champions League? It might be Jude Bellingham. It might be whoever. I need more than what I've got, So Michael Edwards is kind of getting the green light to move these players on. But we need the other door working. The incoming one, Trevor. We need Joe for the incoming door.
Yeah, we really do. It's just that thing of, maybe I'm getting old and cranky, but I just don't like that line because it's so easy for people who are just sort of always so blindly positive to chime in behind it and go, yeah, trust the process, trust the manager, trust the squad that we have, trust the boys that we have. I'm happy with that. But it's just that line of there aren't that many players out there, that could come in here. It just seems a bit disingenuous. I like I say, if you're easily pleased, then you're going to go along with it. We don't have any choice but to go along with it if that's what happens and that window closes or that revolving door closes and nobody's come in. But I think, again, what we're talking about is giving our fellas the best possible opportunity. And just to go back to the Klopp era thing versus the new Slot era thing, I was doing the sums on it there recently. I was thinking about, best Liverpool 11s and best Premier League 11s and all the rest of it. And I'm thinking, and I'm really curious to get your opinion on this one now.
Hey guys, it's Eddie Gibbs from Anfield Index here. I hope you're enjoying this podcast, and I'm sorry to call time on the show before it ends. In the current climate, it's tougher than ever before to offer podcasts for free. At Anfield Index, we produce over 75 free shows every month, which I'm confident is unparalleled in the LFC sphere. Whilst we'd love to offer everything for free, the production costs now make this impossible. That said, we don't want to follow the model of other channels and lock all of our content behind a paywall. So what we've decided to do is to continue offering every show for free, but cut that offering to 30 minutes on our longer shows. So to get all of our shows in full and enjoy the best of everything we have to offer, we really hope you'll consider supporting the channel and signing up at AnfieldIndexPro.com. For about the price of 1 cup of coffee, you'll get every podcast in full with 0 ads. You'll also get access to our LFC VIP community, where you can enjoy live podcasts, engage with our podcasters, and chat with other Reds in real time. So that website again, AnfieldIndexPro.com. Join today.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.